through the opening remarks and motions. So good evening, fellow commissioners and general public. My name is Michael Champness. I'm the chair of the Transportation Advisory Commission. Before we begin, please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the county website on YouTube. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by new state legislation and FOIA, the Transportation Advisory Commission needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask in advance for your patience. First, because each member of the commission is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all other members. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. I will ask each commissioner member participating in this meeting to state your name and location from which you're participating when I mention your name. So at large, Linda Sperling.
I am here participating from my home in Clifton.
Okay. Braddock District, Kevin Morse.
From my home in Burke.
Fantastic. Michael Champness, I am here. Hunter Mill District, Kelly Westenhoff.
I am here in Reston, and I still have the same tech problems I had last time, despite purchasing a new laptop and headphones. So I am on my phone. So I will probably not engage much.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what we can do in the future, but thanks for.
By the way, I heard her perfectly this time.
I did. Yeah. You came through loud and clear. So, all right.
Because people are muting themselves.
Okay. Yes, we will ask people to please be diligent about muting yourselves when you're not speaking, and that will include me. So, I'll be the worst offender probably. Back with the roll call. Mason District, Roger Hoskin. Okay. Pete Sitnick, Vernon District.
I'm here in Mount Vernon District at my home.
Fantastic. Lee District, Alexis Glenn.
I'm here in Alexandria at my home.
Fantastic. Providence District, Jeremy Hancock.
Jeremy in Falls Church.
Fantastic. Springfield District, Eric Theo.
Fairfax Station.
Okay, fantastic. Sully District, David Skiles.
Present from Chantilly.
Fantastic. And finally, our esteemed Vice Chair, Fairfax Area Disability Services Board, Mary Pauline Jones.
Here from my home in the wonderful town of Herndon.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll keep an eye out for Roger, but for now we certainly have a quorum. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to Vice Chair Jones so that I might be heard to make the requisite motions. This is where you accept the gavel.
Yes, I accept the virtual gavel. Thank you. Sorry, I had to unmute myself.
Oh, no problem. Okay, Chairman Champness, that'd be me. I move that we have determined that each member's voice can be adequately heard, each other member of the commission.
You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Braddock.
Okay.
Thank you. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried.
Thank you. I next move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this commission to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. I further move that this commission may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by WebEx online platform or by calling 1-415-655-0001 or 1-844-621-3956 and entering the access code 179-976-2279. The phone number for ADA is 711. Access information is also available at the TAC website at fairfaxcounty.gov, transportation TAC. It is so moved.
Is there a second?
Second. Yes, Pete from Mount Vernon.
Okay, thank you.
Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
I can't talk anymore.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Finally, I move that all of the matters on the agenda previously furnished and posted on the TAC website are necessary for continuity and Fairfax County government and/or are statutorily required for or necessary to continue operations in the discharge of this commission's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities.
You have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. We will now start the tax business per the approved agenda. So I think at some point along the line, you got to give me back the gavel.
Yes, I give you back the virtual gavel.
Thank you. I don't even see it in here, but anyway, well, I've got it back. Thank you very much. We will now move on to the acceptance of the previous meeting's minutes. We have for tonight's consideration 2 of the 3 meeting minutes. We have December, January. We still don't have November yet. We hope to have that by the next time. But sorry for sending them out late. Commissioner Hancock, I noticed your changes that you'd like to make, just the capitalization there. We can certainly do that as we go forward. Are there any other comments on meeting minutes that were sent out earlier this evening?
Mr. Chair, we might want to
Yes.
notice that it seems that Roger has joined.
Fantastic. Welcome, Commissioner Hoskins. Okay, back to the acceptance of the previous meeting's minutes. I entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes en bloc.
So moved.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Any seconds?
Second.
Okay. All right. Any debate on the motion to approve the December and January meeting minutes en bloc? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the meeting minutes are approved by voice vote. All right. Okay. That
What about it?
just to. Oh, I just realized I jumped over Chair's remarks, which I don't have any. But also wanted to welcome the public and guests.
Oh, fun kids.
So I notice that obviously we will have our speakers this evening. I want to welcome them, and we will introduce them here in just a minute for each of for the session coming up here. But also I see that Anna, thank you. Well, actually, you're one of our participants, so never mind that. But also Mike, Brent, thanks for joining us this evening. And I think those are our guests this evening. I will now introduce our panelists here for this evening. Tom Bitsani is not able to join us right now this evening. He was talking to him earlier today about the offsite. We will talk about that later. He has 5 meetings to participate in tonight, one of which was a must attend. And so he hopes to join us a little later, but is not here for right away. So tonight we are very pleased to welcome Carla Bruce, the Chief Equity Officer for Fairfax, Dwayne Pelfrey, the Division Chief for the Transit Services Division for Fairfax Connector, and Anna Nissen, the Chief of Communications, Marketing, and TDM Programs at FCDOT, to talk about the issues that are arising regarding pandemics and changes on the Fairfax Connector service, and of course, One Fairfax policy. But before we get started, I will defer to Commissioner Glenn, who is kind enough to pull this topic together. Alexis, if you'd like to make a few statement remarks, we appreciate it, and then we'll move on to Ms. Bruce.
Sure, thanks, Mike. I won't speak long. I just want to thank our guests for coming to help us understand and learn more about the One Fairfax policy. I've heard a lot about it in a lot of meetings over the last few years, and I think I have a good understanding of it, but I'm really excited to hear more about how the TAC can take the principles and the guidance and apply them to the issues that we're talking about here every month. I kind of get it at a high level, but I'm really interested to know, what are some of the best practices that we can understand and be aware of especially from our positions on a board, perhaps as privileged people who have the time and opportunity to volunteer, how we can take these guidelines and use them in our work and hopefully make some improvements, help the county reach the goals that they're trying to achieve through these policies. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Carla, welcome, and we look forward to hearing your presentation.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I just want to confirm that you all can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Very good. I'm going to share my presentation with you, if you just give me a minute. And want to confirm that you can see my screen. Okay, very good. Well, thank you all for having me this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you. I understand you have a very busy agenda. And so I want to do, as the slide says, create an opportunity for a discussion. But before we jump into the discussion, I do want to answer some questions. I want to answer some basic concepts about One Fairfax that hopefully will inform our conversation today. So as I was introduced, I am the Chief Equity Officer for Fairfax County. I've been in this role for about 2.5 years, though I've worked for Fairfax County for over 20 years in various roles, primarily on the human services side. But how I came into the work of leading the county's equity effort is really illustrated on this slide here. So it is known that there is an uneven opportunity landscape in Fairfax County. So hopefully you'll recognize this map of Fairfax County. And there you'll notice that there are some areas of the county that are highlighted in yellow. This map comes from a report that was released a couple of years ago by Virginia Commonwealth University Center on Society and Health, with support from the Northern Virginia Health Foundation, really looking to better understand the structural drivers of some of the health inequities we are seeing in Northern Virginia. While this map here is just a Fairfax County, this report covered all of the areas that make up the Northern Virginia region. And what this report identified is that depending on where you are in Fairfax County and who you are in Fairfax County, you're likely to have different outcomes and face different life challenges and experience different vulnerabilities. This is just one report. There's been several reports done by other outside organizations, the Urban Institute based in DC, and PolicyLink, an organization based in California in partnership with the University of Southern California, back in 2015, released a report called the Equitable Growth Profile. So all of these reports and others really illustrate that there are variances in opportunity and vulnerability within Fairfax County, across Northern Virginia, and in the metropolitan Washington region. And that variance in opportunity and vulnerability is really predictable. It's predictable by race, and it's predictable by income. So what you see is that in these areas here that are illustrated as yellow, those tend to be areas with higher numbers of people of color living in those areas, and also tend to be people with lower incomes. And so, as I said, my background is in human services, and Fairfax County has a very active human services system that has really worked at an individual level, working to support the identified needs of individuals and families, working in concert with a very vibrant nonprofit community and faith community. But those efforts were really focused at the individual level and didn't necessarily take into consideration the communities in which people live, the very structures that surround people. And what these reports lift up is that if we're going to be effective in addressing those inequities that we see, our strategies need to be place-focused and system focus, and really realize that depending on, like I said earlier, depending on where you are in Fairfax County, you are likely to have different or varying levels of access to opportunity, and that some of that opportunity is really driven by the systems that operate in these areas. And so rather than just focus on the specific needs of individuals and families, it's important to focus on places and systems, and that is what will help us to address these spatial inequities. And when we think about what are we working toward, while we want to sort of address all the sort of individual needs that we see, ultimately what we're looking for is an opportunity to ensure that all people are able to participate in Fairfax County's vibrant economy. And we really are looking at how we can connect opportunity to people in ways that will promote their economic mobility. And so that's the sort of foundation and history of what drove the county to adopt our One Fairfax Racial and Social Equity Resolution and Policy. The resolution was adopted in July of 2016. What it did, it was adopted by our Board of Supervisors and School Board, and it was really an acknowledgement by the county that inequities exist in Fairfax County, that they are predictable by race, and that the county, working with the school and other community partners, would work actively to address those.
Carl?
Yes.
Sorry, a quick question on the previous slide on the map.
Sure.
Since my interest tonight is primarily focused on transportation, although everything that you're doing, I understand and as merit, but would you agree that transportation inequities are much larger spread across the whole county map than just those areas that are highlighted in yellow?
Yeah, and I think the reason why that's important, and in a later slide I can speak to that, is because we want to make sure that people in these areas are able to be connected to opportunities across the county. And so and I should have prefaced my presentation by saying later I'll be joined by staff from Department of Transportation who can talk more specifically about some of the transportation policy and practice challenges faced in the county. Really what I'm here to illustrate is that in order to connect people to the opportunities that do exist in Fairfax County, we have identified transportation as a key opportunity area. And it's not to suggest that these yellow areas are the only areas where there are transportation challenges. This is where the population that faces the most challenges tends to live, due to a lot of different policies, housing policies and other types of policies. But where there is opportunity across the county, opportunity to access jobs, opportunity to access recreational opportunities, of course, are spatially distributed across the county. And if there isn't transportation which connects these populations to those areas, then we view that as a gap. So our focus is not just in these areas, but want to give a sense of where there are higher concentrations of people in need, but want to make sure that folks are able, across the county, are connected to the opportunities that exist. Again, with the idea that ultimately we want to ensure that people are able to actively participate in the economy.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for that.
And so, so we adopted the resolution followed by a policy which really committed the county and the schools to consider equity in all of our planning and decision making. And I that's really speaks to why my role was established, was to help the county government build up our capacity to consider equity. So I've been fortunate to, my office is, or my role is situated in the county executive's office. And really how we're implementing it is through equity leads in every county department who have established equity teams in those departments who are working within their organization and with representatives of the community to identify the equity challenges specific to their areas of work. And so my job is really to support them in those efforts and to look at the intersections across policy areas, because what we realize is that there's no county department that sort of holds the magic key to solve all of the inequities. It's really the intersection across policy areas. So we want to make sure that our transportation policy is connected to our development policy, is connected to our housing policy and health policy and economic policies, because it's all of those things that really come together. So, so while One Fairfax was operationalized by the county as both a resolution and a policy, we really like to think of it as a way of governing and managing the county. So it involved, thinking about where we are today, but also reflecting on our history and how things have evolved over time, which has created our current situation. And so understanding that historical perspective, we recognize that, there are things that we might have to, frankly, undo in order to, support a way forward that creates opportunity for everyone in the county. And so to do that, we are thinking about where we are now and what we want for the future, but no, we do that within sometimes a limited set of resources. We know we do that within a broader context of state and federal rules. And so it's important that we take all of that into consideration and manage sort of the things that we want to do, knowing that some of those actions might require sort of legislative changes to support the things we'd like to see in Fairfax County. But it's also about recognizing that within a defined set of resources, we need to make explicit choices and commit to bold and innovative approaches. Really thinking that we're going to have to do things differently than we've always done them if we're looking to achieve different outcomes. And the way that we do that is in partnership with the community, because while government absolutely plays a role, and again, this is not the in-depth training that I could sometimes provide, but we can look at things over time and see that government, whether intentionally or unintentionally, has supported policies over time, which have created these barriers and opportunity for the population. And so in order to understand how those barriers are present in our community, we have to engage the community. We can't do that in isolation. We also have to work with key stakeholders. So as I mentioned, we recognize, particularly for an area like transportation, so much of it is controlled at the state and federal level. So it requires working across various levels of government and other sectors, and regionally, frankly, in order to come up with the solutions that are going to be most equitable. So that the role of key stakeholders and the role of community is critically important. So we recognize that we make this commitment to advancing equity, but that we can't achieve equity goals alone. We have to do it in relationship and partnership. And so just to give you a sense of sort of where we are and how we're approaching this, I wanted to share with you the framework that's been the basis of our strategy. We adopted this from an organization called the Government Alliance on Race and Equity. They're a national organization made up of 270 plus, I'll say at this moment, because every day there are new jurisdictions joining. The 270 plus jurisdictions across the country, similar to Fairfax County, who have identified inequities in their community and are actively trying to pursue policy choices that will advance equity. And so the framework that they've put forth is this idea of normalizing, organizing, and operationalizing to achieve a vision. And in this case, the vision that we are seeking to achieve is this idea of one Fairfax, a Fairfax where everybody has the opportunity to thrive and live to their fullest potential, supported by an opportunity structure that's available to them. And so normalizing is really acknowledging first that inequities exist in Fairfax County. And for many folks in Fairfax, those inequities are sometimes hidden. And people are not aware that in a county, that some know to be very wealthy, that is very different depending on what corner of the county you're in. We want to make sure that it's understood across the county that our policy choices have to be informed by the fact that not everybody is sharing in the prosperity that is enjoyed by some. And that when we think about who those people are that aren't sharing in the prosperity, it becomes predictable. And as I said before, it's predictable by race, and it's predictable by place, and it's predictable by level of income. Now, there are other areas of marginalization that we have to consider, but the ones that I think are most pronounced across most of the indicators of life success are those ones that I mentioned. And so that's something that we have to normalize and make a strategic part of how we do our work, again, how we govern and manage in Fairfax County. And what we've been doing over the last couple of years since the adoption of the policy is really organized, like I talked about, building up that capacity within our organization to consider equity in our planning and decision making. And with information about how inequities are present, now beginning to operationalize through strategy and identifying priorities so that we can act to address those inequities. And so, again, want to reinforce that we do this as a county government, but we do it in concert, in collaboration with the community and other stakeholders. And this just reinforces the point that inequity exists in the country. This is not unique to Fairfax County, but it is present in Fairfax County across most dimensions of life success. So, this general topic of equitable development, I think, is inclusive of transportation. And I think just as, I've learned more about what's happening related to transportation in Fairfax County, I believe you all also see patterns of inequity. And so what is equity, right? And so if our goal is to advance equity, what is that? So racial equity exists when one can no longer predict advantage or disadvantage by group identity. So what we're looking to do through our efforts is to improve outcomes and to close racial gaps. Again, we want to make sure that you can't identify a group and predict whether or not they're going to achieve life success based on their race or other social categorization. Another way to think about equity is illustrated through this slide. Often equity is used sort of interchangeably with the term equality, but I think this slide does a good job of pointing out a really distinct difference in the two terms. So clearly here in this illustration, the three guys are trying to achieve a goal. In this case, the goal is watching a ball game. Now, if you follow the definition of equality, which would be giving everybody the same resource, if you gave each of these kids the same resource to watch the game, and then asked yourself the question, was that resource effective in helping them achieve the goal? From an equality perspective, the answer would be no. If you approach this challenge, however, from an equity perspective and assigned resources based on the identified need, you'd see that the kid on the left didn't really need a box. The kid on the right was short and required 2 boxes in order to achieve the goal. And so we're looking to advance this focus on equity, thinking about how our population is situated in terms of a set of goals. And I'll speak to this a little bit later, but the goals that we've identified are the goals of our strategic plan. It's the goals that we've identified in terms of measuring the success of the county. So we think about it at an individual level, and we think about it also at a place level. Now, the challenge, however, with this particular slide is it introduces this notion of scarcity. it suggests that in order for the little kid in the purple shirt to achieve his goal, you have to remove something or take something away from the kid in the yellow pants. And so that, however, is not the premise of One Fairfax. It also, in this illustration, really speaks to differences in the people, which is, again, not our emphasis in One Fairfax. This slide, however, I think is a better illustration of the concept. So again, there's three people who are attempting to achieve a goal, in this case, watching a soccer match. What we recognize here that makes this illustration different than the previous one are a few things. One, you'll notice that there aren't really differences in the size of the people, because we really want to emphasize that the work of One Fairfax is not about people's lack. What we're really looking at is where structures in our community, the very foundation on which people stand, are different, and what we can do through policy and practice to address those structures. So in this case, the structure can be seen first by the level of the ground. You see an unlevel ground that the folks are standing on. You also see that there is a fence in front of the people, and that fence is of a sloping height. And so when you consider that as a structure in which people are trying to achieve their goal, if you're going to make a difference, your focus wouldn't necessarily be on the people. Your focus would be on how you can assign resources that compensate for those differences in the structure. So again, it's not about the people's lack that's preventing them from participating in the soccer game or watching the soccer game. It's an unjust or an uneven system and structure that we're looking to address. So that's the concept that we want people to understand as it relates to equity from a One Fairfax perspective, and really, again, reinforce the idea that equity is about fairness and not sameness. The other concept that's important to illustrate is the idea of race. And as I said, one of the greatest predictors, or the greatest predictor of outcomes across most life success indicators in the county is race. And so we talk about race at the institutional and structural levels, right? Because what we're trying to do is to make changes within our institutions through policy, practice, and procedures, and also make changes in the structures that have been created through the various institutions present in our community. There are three ways of thinking about racism, however. Individual level racism, which is the prejudgment, bias, and discrimination exercised by an individual based on a person's race, right? And while that's important and it's something that we do not support or encourage, that is not the focus of our work in One Fairfax. We rely on our diversity and inclusion efforts to help people understand the differences that exist among people. What we're looking for is outcomes, and we're looking at how outcomes are showing up differently for, in our case, white people as compared to people of color, whether that's unintentionally or inadvertently. So sometimes policies, practices, and procedures are applied and designed sort of thinking about people in a general sense and not really taking into consideration how people are situated differently. And when that happens, it produces outcomes that are racialized. And again, this is the institution that begins to produce these types of outcomes. So we're keeping our eye on where the institution is producing racialized outcomes and where institutions come together to create structures in communities which produce racialized outcomes. So this is an introduction, and I should mention that probably within the next month or so, you all will receive a copy of the One Fairfax policy and access to a 30-minute or so video that goes into these concepts more deeply. So what I'm offering to you tonight is a very high level overview, knowing that you all had questions and staff wanted to make sure that that I, conveyed that to me so that I could come in and address those questions now, but recognize that these are deep, important concepts worthy of further exploration that we're not going into today, but wanted to introduce them to you as a part of a broader understanding of the focus of One Fairfax. So wanted to also reinforce that this is work happening across our whole organization. The collective leadership of our Board of Supervisors and school board, supported by our county executive and his team, they're really embodying a leadership focus on advancing equity. And that's now supported by work happening across each organization. And as I described, with equity leads, teams, ambassadors who are delivering training, but making it a part of how we understand our work and how we define success in our work, really recognizing that there are differences in outcomes experienced by people in places, and that's really important for us to strategically consider. And when we start to connect the dots across each of our operational areas, that's when we can integrate our policy and practice. And our view is that by doing this, we're really unlocking the potential of every resident in every area of the county. And so finally,
I'm sorry, Carl, if I could ask very quickly. When you're talking about collective leadership and departmental equity leads and things like that, have you identified folks, either in FCDOT or whatever the case may be, who would be designated to work in this in the transit area?
Yes. So, yes. And so Anna's here tonight, and she serves as one of the equity leads for the Department of Transportation. And when she gets, hopefully she gets a chance to speak a little bit later, she can speak to the work they've been doing. But they've been doing extensive work, and hopefully we'll be able to share that with you to give you, again, I'm giving you a high level overview in some concepts, but they can speak to you more specifically about how they've taken these concepts and applied them to the work of DOT.
Fantastic, thank you.
And so one of the ways that we're looking to connect the dots is through our county-wide strategic plan, which hopefully you all are familiar with. If not, it'll be relaunched in just a couple of weeks. We've had to take a bit of a pause in working on it due to our need to really focus on addressing the pressing needs of the pandemic. But the strategic plan is really giving us a sense of the direction of the county, given the trends we're seeing, both demographically and otherwise. And as I mentioned before, I don't even know if I used this terminology earlier, but those yellow areas on the map that I shared previously, in that report, they refer to those as islands of disadvantage. I will be frank and say I don't like that terminology. That comes from the report. What we have chosen to do is reframe it and really focus on how can we turn those islands of disadvantage into communities of opportunity through the policy and practice of government in partnership with other institutions and with the community. And so again, if you're not familiar with our strategic plan, here's the 9 areas of our strategic plan, but you'll notice that mobility and transportation is one of those elements. And so what our work is to really understand how people and places are situated within each one of these areas. And then through the efforts of the county in partnership, like I said, with other key stakeholders in the community, is to build opportunity structures within these areas. Because again, this is how the community has said it defines success for the county, which means that this is how we should be defining success for everybody in the county. It's really just the idea of recognizing that people are situated differently. And how we think about that concept is through this idea of targeted universalism. So this is a concept that was developed by a professor at the Haas Institute for a Fair and Inclusive Society, based at the University of California at Berkeley. And so what it does is it really just helps us to recognize that we set universal goals, but we recognize in setting these goals that structural inequities exist. So therefore, the same solutions are not going to work for the entire population. The same solutions are not going to work for every area of the county. We have to be more quote unquote targeted. And so our focus now is recognizing those differences that exist and implementing targeted solutions. And we think of those as opportunity structures that create sort of a bridge from where people are now or where areas are now to achieving the goals that we set. And again, the goals that we're using in One Fairfax are the goals that we've established for the county. Just to give you a sense of what, sort of what's in a community of opportunity and where we're really focusing our efforts from an equity perspective: education, employment, again, mobility, food, recreation and cultural opportunities, childcare, digital access, healthcare, justice, housing. These are some of the areas when we look at the data and we see where inequities are present, these are the areas where we have identified the most inequities to be present, and this is where we're really concentrating our efforts across all of the departments. And again, the strategy is creating communities of opportunity. Again, that previous report referred to islands of disadvantage. What we believe we can do following this communities of opportunity concept is first start by having an idea of how vulnerability and opportunity are present in Fairfax County. So we're not just emphasizing areas of vulnerability, we're also recognizing where opportunity is and how we can make sure that vulnerable people in the county are connected to opportunity where it's available. Now, opportunity in some cases isn't present, and when it's not present, we look to build it, right? And again, to build that opportunity, if you're thinking about it from a transportation perspective, may be outside of the control of county government. It might involve working in partnership with the state or working in partnership with the federal government. But the idea is that we want to make sure that we're aware of where opportunity is not present and make it a part of our strategy to build it. In other cases, it's present, but there are barriers of some sort. And we want to make sure that we are connecting people to barriers that do exist. So one of the things that I've talked about in conversation with the community that relates to transportation is the presence of, a bus stop or a metro stop in a certain vicinity, but not necessarily being close enough to be walkable. And so what are some of those barriers that limit people's access to some of the transportation options that are available? So that would be an example of targeting an intervention to connect people to an opportunity that exists. And then, as I mentioned, there are lots of opportunities that I just listed, but in reality, they all fit together because in the county, we are encouraging the development of and participation in an inclusive economy. We want everybody to be able to participate in the economy, to support themselves, to support their families, to be able to contribute to the community in meaningful ways. And so it's not opportunity for the sake of opportunity, but opportunity to be able to fully support oneself in our community. And so I'll just close with offering you a few sort of frames that might be helpful as you look to consider equity into the work of the commission. So really, we're emphasizing what's producing the racial inequities. And as we said, we're not focusing at the individual level, we're focusing at the institutional and structural level. Where data is available, we think it's vitally important because that's helping us to understand the impacts of current policy, and also how we're being effective as we explore and apply new policy in practice. Again, we're focused not just on the individual level, but the systems that are responsible. And we recognize that, you know, while this is a conversation where you're primarily focusing on transportation, there may be other systems and institutions that are impacting you. So we want to, and impacting the work that you're doing. So we want to sort of take a broader, holistic view of responsibility, recognizing that there are systems and institutions outside of your control, but definitely important in terms of your influence in how you might better engage them to achieve the outcomes that you're seeking. And rather than focusing on problems that have already happened, focusing on utilizing the information and insights that are available to us to be more proactive in our strategies and solutions. This next slide, you know, I won't read through the entire thing, but I will just, you know, just reiterate a couple of points that I've already made. One is the use of data and how important it is. One, the data that we have, but also what we need, because we don't always have the data that we need to have a full understanding of the problems that we face. And so it's important to ask for and seek additional data to fully inform the decision-making and the discussions and planning that we're responsible for. And the role of the community is vitally important, particularly for groups like this who are working as a body and representing various areas of the county, and in some cases, various perspectives, but recognize that all of the possible voices to be considered aren't represented at this table. So thinking about other ways to lift up the voice of the community, and particularly the voice of people who are going to be impacted by the various proposals, the policies, the practices that are being considered. So there is sort of one sort of key set of questions that I offer to people that I think is probably a simplistic but easy way to think about strategies for equity. And that is to consider who benefits from or who's burdened by the actions that are taken. And so with anything that you're doing, if you ask yourself that question, who's benefiting and who's burdened? And then where benefits are identified, asking how those benefits can be more broadly shared. And where burdens are identified, seeking opportunities to mitigate those burdens. And I think if you can keep that question at the center of your work, it is really an important strategy for advancing equity. And so just in closing, just a few key takeaways. One, Fairfax commits the county and schools to consider equity when making policies, planning, and delivering programs and services. It's not a program, it's a process. And while it was adopted by our Board of Supervisors, it applies to all the functions of government, including our boards, authorities, and commissions. Equity is about fairness, not sameness. We talked about that in the slides that showed the folks watching the games. Race matters, and so while conversations about race I know can be difficult, it's important that we tackle it and realize that that is really at the core of many of the challenges that we face. And what we're looking to do is to close gaps that may exist and make it so that race is no longer a predictor of outcomes. This is not, as I said, talking about individual acts of bigotry, but more we're focused on institutions, because we rely upon these institutions to set forth procedures, and it's those things that perpetuate inequity. So we function as a part of institutions and systems, and therefore that needs to be the focus of where we can manage what's producing inequity. government, of course, has the responsibility for doing that. And hopefully through the adoption of the One Fairfax policy and resolution, we have expressed as the county our commitment to standing in that role of addressing equity, but we know that we can't do it on our own. You, as a member of a board, authority, and commission, play a role, and other stakeholders in our community play a role as well. I mentioned some reports and information. These things are listed here. I'll make sure I sent this PowerPoint to Calvin, and he can share it with the group. These are active links that you all can take a look at for some additional information. And with that, I will stop the share, and I'm open to answering questions, although I think we might transition into our next presentation.
Carla, Kevin Morse again from Braddock. One comment and one question.
Sure.
On the a comment on the key elements of communities of opportunities. I think those squares are listed almost in the exact order that I would have listed them in. And I would say the first four: education, employment, mobility, and food. If you get those, I think the others would follow along pretty quickly. And then my one question to you is, where do you think we'll be by the time you retire?
You never know, right?
I have no plans to retire
that
anytime soon, but I'll tell you what I'm committed is that I don't know that we will have solved all the inequities that exist, but I'm hoping that we'll have an infrastructure in place where we can meaningfully consider it, and the public will to do it. That's really because we have a saying for One Fairfax that we all do better when we all do better. And if we can establish for Fairfax County's success that this is something that we need to tackle, and it's within all of our best interests that we acknowledge and address these issues, I think we'll all be better off. So that's my focus from now to the point that I retire.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, appreciate all part of that process. I would like to move on the presentations. I would like to have some conversation, some questions then. However, I also don't want to cut off commissioners from asking questions now, Carla, with the presentation we just made. One thing I would say is, as we go forward here, we can cut into the time we'd allocated for the FOIA discussion later and the TAC work plan for these development. Those are things that we can cut down so that we don't just go on deep into the night, because this is a very important conversation and we appreciate you coming here. So with that, I will open it up for other commissioners who want to ask Carla questions directly. Carla, I hope you can stick around through the other conversation, because we want to tie this together. The one observation I will make right now is that one of the things we know, we've talked about wanting to make sure we understand as we go forward with our presentations and our strategies, economic opportunities, different economic opportunities, different regions. This is obviously one of those as well, to a foundation case that we need to keep in mind as we go forward. So appreciate that. With that, again, I'll open it up to other commissioners who may want to ask a question right now, Carla. And then we're also going to move on to the transportation specific stuff in just a minute. So just unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question. I see Alexis, I see hand up. Please do go ahead.
Thank you. And thanks, Carla. That was a great presentation. I really appreciate gaining more understanding of the county's approach to this policy. And my question is, are there, I know that the policy is relatively new in government, in the county government. Are there any processes that you know of or changes that have happened as a result that you could talk about? Like, was there, this little process in this department changed because they had this understanding of these equity issues and realized there was something wrong and they shifted?
Yeah, several things, but I'll just pick a couple just to give you a sense of the range of things. So when we took this work on, one of the things that we saw consistently across multiple departments were challenges with community engagement. And so sometimes, community engagement is sort of viewed as a check the box. It's required, we did it. but there wasn't really an assessment of the quality of that engagement. So multiple departments have really deepened their community engagement efforts, really recognizing that, you know, when we talk about engaging the community, we really need to emphasize impacted groups, right? So it's not just whoever happens to show up or who, you know, whoever has the freedom and flexibility to participate at a meeting at a certain time or whatever. And so I think that's one of the places where we see a lot of work happen is in our community engagement efforts. The other area that I think we've seen a lot of movement in, well, a couple of areas are in the issue around housing affordability. You know, again, getting to the previous comment, if you solve for certain issues, some of the other issues get addressed. And I think housing was recognized as a core issue that really affected a lot of the other inequities that we were seeing. And so one of the things that the board identified as a priority was investments in affordable housing. Now, again, COVID has challenged us with some of the things that we've been able to implement, but some of the things have continued, you know, even without the ability to financially support them at the level that the board had initially committed to, but with the intent to, you know, build, you know, going back to that same model that we talked about before of understanding opportunity and vulnerability, building opportunity and connecting people to opportunity. And so our housing department has put a lot of effort into preserving affordable housing that is currently here because there's not enough of it, and also building affordable housing. And that, I think, has been really informed by the lessons learned and the data and work that's been done through One Fairfax. And I'm sure that our transportation team could offer some specific to transportation, but I will defer to them to share. But I've talked with them extensively over the last year and a half in our work, and so I'm sure they can offer some examples as well.
Okay. Thank you. Pete, I see your hand up, please.
Yep.
Commissioner Sednick.
Carla, I just wanted to thank you, like Kevin did, an excellent presentation. I'm also in the Mount Vernon area, and Alexis is in the Lee district, and a lot of that yellow runs right down the middle of our two districts. And transportation-wise, I'm hoping that some of the things we're already doing will impact that. We're doing the bus rapid transit, some sidewalks and trails improvements. So hopefully we're already leaning into this, but we know we need more work. But
that's right.
Thank you very much for the presentation.
And I should mention that that I have been involved in supporting those efforts around bus rapid transit, and in particular, getting back to some of the community engagement work, making sure that the community, the entire community, had the opportunity to participate or has the opportunity, and some of these things are continuing still currently.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for encouraging that participation, because I also play with the Mount Vernon Council of Citizens Association, and it's an ongoing task to get everybody involved. So if you can light a fire in anybody, that would be great. Yep.
That's what I'm working on.
Thank you.
And I will add right now a little preview of the comments I'll make in the chairman's remarks later. A conversation I had with Shamali Hull, who is Commissioner Alcorn's transportation aide. And one of the things that she talked about with Mr. Alcorn is equity and meeting with other groups and things like that. Carla, that's something we've already been talking about in the TAC. It will be something we talk about in our plan to have here. Right now, it's we scheduled for February 27th. So we are trying to bake that into our process here and have some more specific outreach strategies. We can, to change the makeup of the TAC requires the commissioner to appoint somebody new. serve at their position for as long as they choose to. But in the meantime, and until they decide to make some changes, we can make much more of an effort to reach out to various groups. We plan to do that, and we look forward to helping to both sort of the approach of the outreach, making sure things we're doing get known, but also making sure we're targeting the right groups in the right way at the right time for the right reasons. So I will just mention that now. So.
And that's been a conversation that I've had with many groups. You know, the board chooses people to participate on the various board authorities and commission, but it's on how that work is conducted. And so, you know, composition is one level of this, but you know, how the work is conducted, I think, is more important. And that is really within the control of the respective boards, authorities, and commissions. And you have a great team that can support you in being more engagement. And in fact, we one of the things that we stood up to support this interest in more inclusive community engagement is a steering committee across departments to build up a framework and resources to support that. And so I believe there's a representative from transportation serving in that group, but if not, we'll make sure that DOT is aware of what's happening there, because that is intended to support BACs who are interested in doing more of this work.
Well, thank you so much. And you've already acknowledged Anna's involvement. We look forward to hearing from her in just a moment. We would like to hear more about that, make sure that we're tied together here and that the levels of communication are in fact taking place. With that, if there are no more questions specifically for Carla, again, Carla, I do hope you can stick around for the next part.
I can stick around.
Thank you very much. Unless there's any other specific questions, although you can come back and ask her the question later. She's not leaving right away. She'll be here until she retires. What? With that, Anna and Dwayne, and I know Michael, you're here as well. Appreciate your involvement. I think we'll ask now. I'm not sure who of the three is going to be giving the presentation here. The next, I see Dwayne, your name is on the slide, so that kind of makes me think it's you. We'd like to move on to your presentation next, Dwayne, and welcome Anna and Michael's participation as well as whatever's appropriate as we go forward.
You might need to unmute yourself, Dwayne.
He looks unmuted. Oh, there he is. Okay, I think I see, well, I still see you mute on there, Dwayne, unfortunately. Do we need to do our little magic act to sort of get you in as a participant now or something? Or we had this issue with Alexis earlier in the evening.
Michael, if you could share your screen, I give you the role of the presenter.
Oh, you want me to do it? I can do that if you'd like.
No, I'm talking about Michael first.
Gotcha. Okay, wrong Michael.
Yeah, I can share my screen, but I thought Dwayne was going to control the whole thing. So
okay, that's
yeah.
right.
So let's see if why don't you give him the ball?
Okay, I will. Okay, thank you.
There we go. We can see.
You're still on mute, Dwayne. It might be on your computer settings, but we did hear you earlier when you came in first time, so.
Yeah, I see lips moving and no sound. Calvin, do we need to have Dwayne drop off and come back in again? How do we get?
We might need to have Dwayne call in. Hold on one second.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Hey, Dwayne, if you can hear us, I'm going to put it on the chat as well. You should call in on your phone so you can show the slides and then speak through your phone. So I'm going to put that in the chat as well.
We're fortunate. We've been very lucky in the past. We've not had technical challenges, not insurmountable. I know Kelly has had some issues in the past meeting as well. So we may have a situation here we need to figure out how to work through this. But
Dwayne is showing that he has headphones on, and sometimes that his screen shows headphones, and that's been an issue at other meetings.
okay.
Because I'm looking at his and it's showing that his headphones are activated.
Okay.
So, and I don't know why.
All right. Are we able to?
Hold on one second, Mike. I'm trying to call Dwayne. Hold on one second.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
this is Eric. As long as
Yes, sir.
we have a moment,
Sure.
I'd like to ask Carla a question.
Of course.
And essentially, while you were speaking, I attempted to see if I could overlay some of the county GIS information to sort of see where those yellow areas correlated with in terms of various things. And what I realized is that it was difficult to overlay or crosshatch the various kinds of criteria in terms of transportation access and things. And I was wondering if there's somebody in the county whose job it is to combine all of that information. And the second thing I was going to ask, which is / a suggestion, is that I would think that the local strength of Wi-Fi signaling in an area and density would be highly indicative, particularly in the COVID times, of access to education and such. And so there's a thing called war driving. It's got the wrong name, but it's a hacker thing where you go around and survey networks. And you can get apps for your phone or your iPad that'll do it. And of course, if you get more sophisticated gear, you use a bigger antenna, you get a better map. But it seems like there ought to be somebody in the county whose thing it is to pull all that together. And I'm wondering, is there that person or group?
Yes, I'm fortunate to have a member of my team who is a GIS analyst. And so the data from that report on that slide, there are certain gaps in it. What we've done is we've created our own set of indicators for the county that has identified these, what we call our communities of opportunity. And we are able to overlay them with lots of different data. And one of the things we're actually looking at right now is digital access. It's because it's such a big issue at the moment related to schools, but also, related to workforce. And so we do have that. And one of the links in the PowerPoint that I shared is to that. There's two versions of it. It's a general vulnerability index and the COVID-19 vulnerability index, which adds a few additional indicators specific to the risks related to COVID. But absolutely, having that capability and to be able to to utilize that mapping capability. And I believe, I don't want to misspeak, but I actually think we've made that data set available to the Department of Transportation, and they've been able to use it as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Real quick, I don't know, Anna, not to put you on the spot, but if you know, do you know what has been received?
Yes, Dwayne is trying to call in right now. I gave him the phone number and the passcode, so let's see if he comes in, Calvin, as a call in. Hold on one moment.
Well, thank you.
And like you said, we've been lucky so far with these meetings, but sometimes
Dwayne
has joined the meeting.
Hey.
Okay, sorry. I guess hopefully I'm connected by phone.
We can hear you. You know, if you mute, we had trouble with you muting at home. If you mute at home, we might be able to see you, see your face through the computer and hear you through the phone. I don't know. I don't want to get greedy, but that might work.
Okay, unfortunately, I'm getting a really bad echo, mic with the phone on and from the computer. Okay. It worked fine. I tested it multiple times today. I have no idea. I don't have headphones in, anything. Okay. So
well,
we'll
take this.
Dwayne, you might want to try hitting sound off on your computer. Yeah. Just using your phone. That's happened to me. Yeah, there's a button at the top where you can do sound off.
Okay, yeah. Got it. Got the sound off, and hopefully I can still hear everyone.
Can you hear us? Test, test.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you okay.
Great. Well, I apologize for the technical difficulty here. Let me try to get the presentation back up.
Okay. We're all among friends here. We'll figure this out as we go forward. So thanks very much.
All right, thank you. I'm going to set the phone down, and hopefully you can still hear me. Good evening, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. As you know, my name is Dwayne Pelfrey. I'm the Chief of the DOT's Transit Services Division, and I wanted to spend some time with you trying to comprehensively answer the questions that I submitted or were submitted to us earlier prior to the presentation, including what can the county do to ensure bus service cuts do not disproportionately impact low-income and minority riders? Concerns over riders that have alternate travel schedules. Concerns over the cost of shared ride services for price-sensitive populations, or in other words, those that may be forced onto Uber due to lack of public transportation. So those were the questions that we received initially, and I've geared my presentation around those, and I'm going to attempt to give you a sort of a deep dive into how we operate and the things that that we do to keep things moving. I'd like to start by saying I couldn't agree with those statements more, and you've really touched upon some of the most important considerations that drive all of our decision making related to equity and transit services, and really one of the key reasons we were one of the first transit systems in the region to fully restore all of our bus services. COVID-19 created unprecedented challenges to society, as we all know. Transportation is deemed as an essential service and is one of 16 critical infrastructure sectors. So our continuity of operations planning began almost immediately. And you're seeing on the screen here some of our overarching goals that we set out to respond to challenges arising from the pandemic, considering first and foremost the health of passengers and employees. We had a lot of decision making to do, relying on information from health officials, best practices, and industry knowledge. And absolutely what drives us more than anything else is maintaining critical services for low-income households, minorities, elderly, and disabled customers. This slide is just a quick view of our timeline. I'll have more to say about these slides in the following slides. As with all transit providers, we had to quickly pivot and focus our efforts to deal with the pandemic. Early considerations included how to properly clean and disinfect for the coronavirus, creating spacing for drivers and passengers while meeting the needs of those that need the service the most. You may remember this debate and discussions around masks that continue today. 1 mask, 2 masks is better. I remember ordering my first set of masks, and I had to get those from out of the U.S. to get them quicker. And I also remember watching the U.S. Surgeon General tell us all how to make a homemade mask, which was actually my first mask. Then ultimately, of course, we had to begin to plan when would we recover services. So the dates that you see on here are the critical dates, starting with the beginning of the pandemic and looking at how we would maintain vehicles, suspending fare collection, reducing services in early April, dealing with the various experts on mask requirements, all the way to fully restoring services and ultimately back to normal and collecting fares. Staff, we took a strategic approach to COVID-19 planning. Many transit providers were slow to restore bus services, and as you may well know, many are still not at 100% restoration. Our approach was really designed to maintain transit services for those that need it the most, as I said. In April 11th, we cut approximately 30% of the connector service, mostly for commuter routes, which are really designed for the people that are going into the office, i.e. the people that aren't traveling right now, and even yet still many today. Our recovery strategy plan was developed to really be ahead of the demand for employees to return to work, encourage social distancing within the bus, and also to provide our customers with confidence as they return to the county's bus system. In March, we began seeing more detailed guidance from health officials. We all remember the, make sure we wash our hands, try to maintain 6 feet of distance, stay at home if you're sick, be careful touching surfaces and then touching your face. So we were challenged to source proven disinfectants and increase cleaning procedures on buses and in transit stations, as you might imagine. Going back to the beginning days of the pandemic, and even today, really, there's a lot of unknowns about what to expect and how the virus spread and so on. So we didn't know at that time, March and April, when or if vaccines would be available. The science was, and of course, still is evolving. Employers and labor unions had major concerns for employee safety. It was important for us to have operator protections in place before returning to front door boarding and fare collection, similar to what we've seen in the grocery store for months now. So what this slide shows you, and it's kind of hard to see, but it's a full door barrier that's been installed in 329 of our buses. And the glass is retracted. That glass, if you can kind of see that in the picture, actually slides forward toward the fare box to give the operator some protection. In the early days of the pandemic, personal protective equipment was at a premium. It was difficult to find. We had communications with everybody. The county certainly helped us a great deal to the governor's office. And, what do you need? And so gloves, hand sanitizer, cleaning products, and masks were all in short supply and posed significant challenges for all transit providers. And you remember the stories at hospitals. Many hospitals couldn't get the equipment that they needed. And the advice was, of course, let the better mask and the better equipment go to the hospitals, those that were trying to keep us all safe. Today, we've solved most of those problems, and we maintain a minimum of 100-day supply in all of our materials. So we're in much, much better shape than we were at the beginning of the pandemic. Fares, boarding, and service reductions slide here. Just a quick slide to let you know that we did suspend fares March 24th, consistent with what other transit systems did across the country, frankly. But for our customers with mobility needs that may need to get on the vehicle toward the front, we certainly were able to accommodate them in doing that. We did a lot of website messaging and put signage on our buses to encourage people to allow others to allow proper distance between passengers on the bus. And again, we reduced, due to reduced ridership, we curtailed service fairly significantly, not nearly as deeply as some of the other regional providers did April the 11th. And I also wanted to put a bullet on this slide. Nobody was paying for fares. Our ridership was highly impacted. So thankfully, I think it was March of last year, the largest economic stimulus package that this country has ever seen was awarded, and most transit agencies across the country received federal CARES Act funding to help bridge the gap between the fares that weren't there and also to help us pay for the cleaning and the products and the PPE that we needed to keep our systems running. And if you're curious, we've spent just shy of $1 million to date on our PPE and bus equipment and disinfecting. Face coverings, I mentioned face coverings. You may remember initially we were all urged to wear face coverings. We were urging our customers to do that well ahead of Governor Northam's order, which I believe was sometime in May. It was great to receive that order. It added a little more power and emphasis behind what really was a requirement that we had to softly enforce. We didn't want to deny anybody a ride to that job that they so desperately needed to get to. If you fast forward, many of you may have heard that one of President Biden's initial executive orders required initial mask mandate through all modes of transportation, including surface transportation. That was quickly followed by the CDC order and mandate within the week, late January, and ultimately February 1st, the Transportation Security Administration issued a security directive to all surface transportation providers, including us, that we had to ensure that our riders adhere to the new federal mask mandate. I also thought you would find it be interested to know that we are giving away face coverings on our bus system and at transit stations. We started doing that sometime around June, and so far we've issued over 100,000 free face coverings. On the right of the slide, you see some of the things that we had to coordinate with our regional partners to address challenges, to learn and share best practices. I want to let the Commission know that we're also well connected nationally through the American Public Transit Association. Myself and other team members, we serve on several committees, and as the Federal Transit Administration as well. I know you're interested in hearing more information about how our ridership is doing, so hopefully you can follow these graphs a little bit. This graph shows weekday ridership trends, and you can see the notations toward the left of the graph. Sort of when COVID started, we went to free fares and we reduced our service, and by mid-April, our ridership had been decimated. You also will notice a little bit of recovery in May and June, sort of the summer, as really some of the back-to-work restrictions were lifted. Some persons began to gain confidence in their public transit system, but initially we lost about 75% of our ridership, and that was across the board for all bus providers. Rail, and even rail today, heavy rail and commuter rail, it's still 80 to 90% below pre-pandemic because, again, the commuters aren't being necessarily required to return to work at this point. So bus systems have recovered much quicker than rail systems, at least so far. Another thing I will note is that on August 29th, I've got a line showing that there when we fully restarted service, and that's in the bullet up above. Since we fully restarted, we were averaging about 16,000 weekday passengers per day, and our month-over-month increases have been 4 to 5%, currently averaging over about 400,000 rides per month. Saturday. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Why is the bus system recovering faster than rail for riders?
Well, it has to do with the riders that we're serving. Our commuter routes, our long haul routes that we initially reduced, are recovering much slower than our local routes that are serving more populations that have transit dependencies, one or less cars, and the people that are relying on us for their critical connection to their work and school. So those riders have came back to transit much quicker and really weren't gone as long, frankly. But we still have some riders to gain back. As businesses open and our commuter routes get busier again to the Pentagon, to DC, we should see our ridership return to normal slowly over time.
Okay, thank you.
And Dwayne, this is Tom Bashadny. I've joined, but I think that one of the big distinctions is the difference between office workers and everybody else. And largely the clientele that Metro Rail and the Virginia Railway Express are office workers, many of them federal workers, but also private sector workers. And all of those people have, or the vast majority of those office workers have the ability to telework. And so that's one of the reasons that rail ridership hasn't recovered as quickly, Whereas whether you're a hospital worker or whether you're a grocery store worker or you need to frequent a grocery store or you need to go to a doctor's appointment, the people that are on the local routes don't have the options necessarily to telework the way office workers do.
Right. Excellent point, Tom. And I'm going to talk in a little slide toward the end of the presentation about the survey that the Greater Washington Partnership has done with employers. And I encourage everybody to access that resource when you have time. I won't have time to call it up this evening, but in that survey, you'll note that most employers, while they plan to increase the amount of teleworking going forward, there are very few that plan to continue teleworking 5 days a week, as Tom noted, and many are doing here today. So we do see our ridership and unfortunately traffic congestion coming back at some point in the future. And again, we restored all of our services with the goal of being ahead of that demand.
I'll just, if I could, just jump in right here, just to make a point that, we've talked about telework and TDM in the past and trying to not have the roads, snap back to be as congested after the pandemic as they were before. We're certainly seeing a lot of anecdotal evidence of people who can telework, continuing to telework. And Tom, thank you for jumping in just at the right time to make that point. And so I don't want to turn into a telework discussion, but that is obviously another thing the TAC has worked on and been aware of and need to be involved in, both from the public transportation side and obviously the automobile side. So thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Mike, for those comments. Just the Saturday slide, we've got the same type of graph for Saturday and Sunday, and our Saturday ridership and our Sunday ridership has recovered well over 90% of pre-pandemic levels. And one of the commissioners had picked up and made that comment, picked that up from a prior staff comment, and I agree with that comment. It just shows how vital our transit services are, and the fact that weekend ridership has recovered, and I'll go ahead and show Sunday to 95% or so of what it was before the pandemic. And depending on employer decisions and the confidence that we're instilling in what we're doing within public transit, we hope that the weekday services won't be too far behind if we do our jobs well. This slide shows the public communication that went out when we did return to full service. And contrary to some of our neighboring providers, we're actually adding new services. And there's 2 new routes listed, 697 and 722, that we started in the fall as part of putting all of our system back out there. And I think that's really important to note. Free fares and rear door boarding remained in place until the 1st of January, even after we instilled all the route service back. And I'll just also make a quick note that even today, WMATA Metrobus is only running about 75% of their pre-pandemic services, just as an example. And same thing with other regional providers. I have a list not in front of me right now, but there's some that are running near 100% certain times of the day. There's only a couple that is running 100% all day, and I think we're one of the larger systems doing that.
Dwayne, if I could interrupt just very briefly, and if you don't know the answer right off, that's fine. It's a little bit of an unfair question, but we've been sort of tracking as as a potential possible future topic, discussing the status of things on Route 697, 698, and 699. Now, 697, I see 697, 699 on your list here. 698, is that another one that might fit in this category? Or is that a completely separate kind of route? If you don't know how, that's okay. But
no, it's in there. That's our Vienna to Pentagon route, and all 3 of those, Mike, are commuter routes, and those are the ones where we're waiting on our riders to go back to work. So any presentation on those routes right now would not show a lot, because those are going to be the last to recover. But we'll be happy to do that for you in the future.
Well, I appreciate that. The reason I'm asking is I wanted to place in my mind where it fits in. You've answered that question, and we will obviously get in trail with you on those routes, and perhaps, quite honestly, in a larger context with all the stuff that's going on as we go forward. But I just wanted to take advantage of that question at the time to ask. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. This slide simply shows, once again, our communication to the public We had installed our driver's shields, and we were returning to front door boarding and beginning to collect fares again after about 9 months of not being able to do so. And again, that's in line. We'll not have started within a day or two of us, and most regional providers and others across the country had returned to fare collection before we were able to do so. Okay, this is a really important slide, and so I want to sort of spell this out a little bit. And I think most of you have heard of Title VI, but Title VI of the Civil Rights Act is a federal law and prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin. The Federal Transit Administration requires transit providers to comply with the law. So when you take Title VI and actually you couple it with environmental justice, it provides protections for those populations, including low income and minorities. So that's very important. And that Title VI plan that I'm referencing, we have to update that every 3 years and submit that to the Federal Transit Administration. The board approves our plan. We just submitted our last update, I think, in September or October of last year. So a lot of the things that govern what we do and equity within the transit system are governed by our Title VI plan. So I've listed a few key elements.
Just a quick technical question on that. If you eliminate a bus stop in a well-to-do area, say McLean, and then you eliminate a bus stop in a more economically challenged area, is that considered equal under Title VI because it affects the disadvantaged area presumably more than it does the affluent area?
Okay, and that's a great question. We have bus stop guidelines that are adopted as part of our Title VI plan, and they actually tell us where we can put bus stops or bus shelters or different amenities based on ridership, based on the type of route, based on the time of day. So we have a guidelines to guide us on where we place our amenities. And every 3 years when we submit our plan, we actually have to do a GIS overlay and profile showing the federal government where our amenities are and showing our demographic information so that if we were out of kilter, it would show up and we would have to answer for that. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit.
Thank you.
Sure. And the key elements and policies that we've listed on the slide here, and the first two are absolutely critical for what we do. The public participation plan and the language access plan are key components within our overall Title VI plan. And the public participation is just what it implies. It ensures that we have a great deal of inclusion. I'll say more about that on a future slide. The language access plan ensures that we get our information out to people that have limited English proficiency. And I'll show you a number on that here in a future slide. We have to gauge our service standards and monitor our performance in several areas. I'll talk about that in a minute. And under Title VI, we have to put any change that we do to the system. Every time we add a route or modify a route or anything, we have to do an analysis. We have to look for, does it qualify as a major service change? Does it create a disparate impact or a disproportionate burden? And there's thresholds defined in our plan. And if we exceed those thresholds and we create adverse effects, is what we call it, we have to work to mitigate those adverse effects. So that governs every service change. If you're listening to a board meeting and we're taking one of our board items for approval, those items are all included in our submissions so that the board can review that we've done our work related to Title VI. And I just want to show you a little bit on this slide about some of the service monitoring that we do. The graph down at the bottom shows you that we have 54% of our routes are classified as minority, 46% non-minority. That's based on demographic profiles and where our routes run. The information up top, the vehicle load is the measurement of how many people are seated or how many people are standing on a bus, for example, during peak times. Vehicle headway refers to the frequency, how often your bus comes. A reliability measure is on-time performance. So if we had minority routes, that had limited frequency or limited bus service and poor on-time performance, and everybody had to stand from point A to point B as compared to non-minority routes, that would show up in our transit service monitoring. We'd have to do something very specifically about that. On the right of the slide here, service accessibility touches on something that I think Carla mentioned earlier about, we were talking a little bit about bus shelters, and Kevin, you mentioned that too. And this really goes to how far I have to walk to get to a bus stop. So if minority communities had to walk farther than other communities had to walk, that would be not only unfair, but inequitable. So we have to measure that. Vehicle assignments gets to the age of the vehicle. If we put our oldest vehicles that are more subject to breaking down on minority routes, that would also be flagged in our analysis. And then finally, the distribution of transit amenities. Kevin, gets right to your question about where do we put our trash cans, where do we put our benches so people can sit, and where do we put our bus shelters. All these things are carefully monitored and measured as part of our Title VI program. I thought you would find
if I could ask a quick question, looking back at Carla's brief talking about equity there, is there a way, or how is there a way to bring sort of equity into this? Because you might find that in certainly more economically disadvantaged areas, it's more difficult to walk or something like that. You want to minimize the walks. In a place like, say, McLean in the Drainage District where I'm from, maybe you get away with a little bit more. Is that something that you incorporate there, or if so, in what way?
Well, absolutely, and Tom will probably want to jump in on this.
Okay.
We have a substantial budget for pedestrian and bike and bus stop improvements, and we spend it, frankly. To engineer pedestrian improvement or a bus stop, you have to have right-of-way, we have to do proper permitting, and we have engineers that are working on these projects daily. They're actually reported to our board through their districts, and we probably have more that we would like to do. I'm not sure, Tom, if you want to weigh in on that a little bit.
Sure. When we put together the transportation priority plan that goes back to 2014, we did have a factor in there. We didn't specifically call it equity, but it was intended to make sure that we were looking at disadvantaged communities and making sure that we were putting in transportation improvements in areas where people might need sidewalks more than they, you may need a sidewalk sidewalk may be in greater demand in, for example, the Richmond Highway corridor than it might be in Great Falls. And so that was something that we did look at when we're putting the transportation priority plan together, and we are continuing to use that as the guide. So yes, it does fit together. We do anywhere from probably about 50 bus stop improvements a year as capital projects, and they are balanced throughout the county to areas. And one of the key factors in where we do those improvements is ridership and usage of the bus stops. Yeah. So you may have 1 or 2 riders in Great Falls area, but you might have 30 or 40 riders in the Richmond Highway corridor, for example. So those bus stops that have more usage are going to be higher on the list in terms of where improvements are made.
That certainly makes sense. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Dwayne. Yes.
Tom, it's Kevin. And maybe this, I was going to say this maybe towards the end, but I'll pop it in here now. With the trends from the pandemic, and I heard you mentioned VRE. I heard the amazing stat on VRE ridership today, how much it had dropped. Rail ridership is down. With the teleworking obviously going to be going up, even after the pandemic, it's still going to be there. What are you able to be able to make a determination to say, what, we're spending a lot of money on rail, but that's not serving the need of where the people need it to get these people in the lower income areas to the job opportunities. we need to put more emphasis on bus service, where we need to blow some of it up and be looking at partnering with Uber, Lyft in that time. Is it too soon to be asking that kind of question?
Well, Kevin,
So
I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, so Kevin, I would say it's probably too soon to be able to, it's not too soon to ask the question, but it's too soon to answer the question. I do have a whole presentation that we've done on kind of the impact of the pandemic so far, and some thoughts about the future. And so if the TAC is interested at some point, I'd be happy to provide that or give that to you. But I think it's too soon to be able to know exactly the answer. I do think that the kind of hyper telework that office workers are doing right now is not something that we're going to see in the future. I think we'll see more telework than we did prior to March of 2020, but I don't think we're going to continue to see 5-day-a-week telework after vaccines are widely available. So good question, one that we're definitely asking ourselves quite a bit, but I think it's too soon for us to be able to give you a definitive answer on that. And until vaccines are widely available, I think it's going to be very difficult to answer that question.
And I would just add to your point there on the telework. It's definitely not, going to be 100% telework, and the surveys are already out there of people that are teleworking saying they do need to get back into the office for some portion of the week. So I agree with you there. Thank you for answering that.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. The only thing I would just add quickly is, as Tom said, it's too soon to have the answer. But mobility is redefining itself largely, as this group well knows. And so we've just completed a study on alternate transit services, trying to figure out how we can do a better job of reaching communities in the county where a full-size bus may not make sense. And so we're reviewing that and considering our options for the future as mobility is redefined and maybe accelerated to some degree because of the pandemic, I'll say. One of the things, in order to better serve our community, we have to understand our community. So we just put some quick demographics on here on the left, is from the American Community Survey census data of the county information. You will note 49% minority population and 17%, even as wealthy as Fairfax County is, 17% low-income households. That's from 2019. We have 2019 onboard survey data from our actual bus riders. And you will also note that based on that survey, roughly 2 out of 3 of our riders were minorities, medium household income of $45,000. And I mentioned the LAP, or the Language Access Plan, earlier, which is designed to help us communicate with folks with limited English proficiency. And you see that 19% of our survey respondents, or almost 1 in 5, I'll call it, spoke English less than very well. So we do understand our community.
If I may,
sure.
Going back to Kevin's question a little bit, as much, I think the bus service is totally important, especially for low-income riders. But buses are slower, even the BRT are slower than rail. And in this area, speed does help. So we need a good combination between the bus service and the rail service to really get the job done. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, thanks. And I think Tom and I agree with you and many of our board members, and we're actually spending a lot of time developing our transit strategic plan, and we broke the county up in 5 sectors, and we're looking at every sector, trying to find the proper mix of types of bus services and rail services to that point. And you can find a lot of information about that online. We're working in the Centerville, Chantilly, Vienna area, and Tysons at this time. Thank you for those
Dwayne, before
comments.
you continue, there is a question that's come in from Kelly. Do you have COVID numbers as to how many of your drivers/operators were positive / diagnosed, recognizing their exposure might have been elsewhere. In other words, do they have potential, did they potentially suffer more exposure to the virus due to continuing to work? And we do have some data on exposure.
Yeah, we do, and I'm happy to share that. And I'll just start out by saying, by and large, every study that I've seen, every one of my peers that I talk to, nobody's found a connection. Transit is not a hot zone for transmitting the virus. That just simply hasn't been proven anywhere in the world. In our case, we have a very large contract. We have one of the largest, actually, contracts in the entire U.S. with over 800 employees. We've had around 78 positive cases of COVID reported. So that sounds like roughly 10%. And I will give you a comparison number, and you can find this on Metro's website. WMATA publishes this data, and they've been doing this for months now. WMATA's had almost 1,100. And I would say probably roughly, maybe higher than, I don't know exactly how many train drivers and bus drivers they have, but that gives you a little bit of scale. We have 3 major operating divisions, over 800 contract employees, just under 80. WMATA is 6 or 7 times our size, and they've had about 1,100. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, I see Kelly is not on the list of participants anymore. Tom, maybe she sent you a text or something there. So unfortunately, we've been having some technical challenges here this evening.
Kelly's participating by phone. So she is still on, and she's participating by phone.
Okay, great. I'm glad she's still there. Hopefully that answered Kelly's question. On slide 18, this slide shows our key marketing and communication strategies and how elements from the Title VI plan, including the public participation plan and the language access plan that are referred to, are used. Our approach is designed to ensure a high level of community outreach and participation in our transit system planning, including targeted outreach to minorities and low-income communities. So this is a slide that Anna put together, and you can see that we focus on reaching people where they are with multilingual considerations. We coordinate with governments, multi-agencies, community organizations. We do pop-ups, public meetings, stakeholder groups. We have thanks to Anna and her team, we have a great online presence these days with onboard surveys, apps, Fairfax online chats. And then we do, obviously social media, targeted direct mail. We put all kinds of information in our transit facilities and buses. And then we have, some of you may remember, I think I gave the TAC a presentation on bus trackers several years ago when we first, went into the ITS world and took a big step forward. I know I did for the board a couple of times, but Bus Tracker is our online platform where you can track your buses, subscribe to messages, get text and email alerts, and we also do onboard annunciation inside our vehicles as well. So if there are questions on that later, I'll have Anna jump in and help answer those. As I alluded to this earlier, go ahead, Kevin.
Just a quick question on the outreach. It looks like a tremendous effort. You get any feedback from Carla or One Fairfax that, hey, that's good, but it's not enough? You're missing people?
Dwayne, do you want me to take that one, or do you want to?
Well, yeah, you can. I was just going to say that we're definitely coordinating and the big picture stuff with Carla. Anna's our equity representative. We get feedback. We measure our feedback within our actual Title VI plan itself. And that's really where we define our outreach activities. But Anna, go ahead, please. What would you add?
Sure. I guess the one thing I would add is that, yes, we do coordinate very closely with Carla's team, as well as the multiple agencies within the county that actually are boots on the ground working with individuals that have historically been hard for us to reach. Not to say that they're hard to reach, they've been hard for us to reach. And we can always do better. So I would not say at all that we're doing perfectly when it comes to engaging people specifically who are low income or beyond the digital divide or the language divide as well. But we are definitely taking steps as part of not only One Fairfax efforts as FCDOT is implementing our impact plan, but also as part of Title VI, as Dwayne mentioned. One of the key things for us to become more successful in engaging people who use our transit system is to work with our partner agencies on the ground, working with communities directly instead of doing mass communications, which used to be the norm about 10 years ago. So building community partnerships and working through community organizations has been a key to get to those people who will not come to your public meeting, who will not respond to your online survey and so forth. But again, we can always do better, and we're trying to do better. And as Carla mentioned, there is the countywide group working currently, which actually FCDOT is not part of, Carla, but I know there's other land development agencies as part of the, not the steering committee, but the larger group looking at how to do more equitable community outreach and engagement. And we're very much looking forward to the recommendations and continued support from the countywide effort to give us even more tools to do this right. So we're learning, we're moving to the right direction, but I would not say we're perfect at it. So if that helps answer your question.
I'm sure it's not an easy task. You do, just quickly, do you do any like PSAs on maybe radio stations that
Yes.
Those groups listen to? And
Yes, so
like
we definitely do various things depending on what our area of the county or what populations we're trying to reach. We have used radio ads and streaming ads are also very popular, for instance, with the Latinx communities, which is interesting. We also did a countywide mailer that most of you who obviously live in Fairfax County should have received on our 10-year strategic plan for Connector, which had information on how to provide your feedback in the top 10 languages spoken in Fairfax County. That went into every household in the county about a month ago. So exactly, there's Mike is pulling his out. So we're going to extra lengths during COVID because we cannot be out there with people like we would like. So we're trying to get to people through the radio, through also other type of online videos that we, put out there through social media, which seem to be reaching lots of audiences that would not regularly listen to our regular meetings, for instance. So
that's great. Thank you for that.
Sure.
And who don't have the patience to sit through things like this. Well, thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Ann. I believe the TAC had actually received a presentation about the Greater Washington Partnership COVID tracker. Is that correct?
We did as part of our TDM work back in September. So, and we will need to get back to that, but yes, we did see that before.
Great. I just wanted to put this on here, commissioners, and just, I was having trouble with the embedded link, so I won't try to link in there, and you've seen it anyways, but this tool is a great resource for our customers and for businesses, and has good information on how crowded trains and buses and stations are. Obviously, trains and stations are not crowded at all right now, but some bus routes are beginning to get crowded. The limitation is the information is not in real time. But it's also a good resource for what employers are thinking of doing in terms of COVID recovery. And I was leafing through there over the weekend, and you'll see if you go in there, most of the people that are teleworking now in certain jobs, that's going to flip. Those graphs are going to completely change. So I encourage you to go back in there, at least from I think it was 170 employers that were surveyed as part of this data set. The other thing that I wanted to mention quickly is that there was questions about employers and confidence in public transit contained within this data set, and people are getting more confident that their transit agencies will be able to provide them with safe transit as we work our way through the pandemic. And I thought that was important. That's why I left this slide in, knowing that you've seen it before. About 3 years ago, I told the Board of Supervisors that the Connector data would become available on Google, and that was very positive for the Connector and Google Transit users. Since that time, and actually last August, we began providing real-time GTFS feeds to Google. So customers can now see the connector in real time on Google, which is fantastic. So these screenshots actually show our data from Google, and you can see maybe the little information tab right here. And that's one of the things that Google is trying to do with their crowdedness. It's their word, not mine. I guess that's a real word. Features and the things that they've embedded into their Google Maps now is allow consumers to not only tell each other when things are crowded and what's going on, but to get specific information about what agencies are doing and requiring. So I just think that's great that we're there, and our information is so much more widely available now than it was before. So we do need Google and other platforms to help us share information about the county's bus system. Is really getting to my last slide here. So what are we going to continue to do, and what are our next steps? Obviously, coordinating regionally and nationally could be more important. Things are evolving. You know, new technologies may become available. I'll just give you a quick example here. In our buses, which, as you know, are rather expensive and they have a lot of systems. Our heating and air conditioning system in our buses, the company that manufactures those is actually testing UVA versus UVC, which is more harmful to humans. And maybe in a month or two, they may have a market solution where we could actually put a UVA treatment system in our buses at a cost, of course, to help rid buses of the coronavirus. So, and that's just one small example of many that I could go on about that research is underway. So we're doing a lot of things now, but we intend to stay connected with the research and decide what we can do next to, of course, keep us all safe. I mentioned Google Transit, and that's importance already. Move you down to bullet 4. We're considering enhancing our ITS technology, Bus Tracker or Clever, and we can actually publish our own crowding information within our own software within Bus Tracker at a cost. We're looking at enhancing that module now. It may take a few weeks to do it, but we think that may be important, again, to help build confidence as riders do come back to the connector. Third bullet, the American Public Transit Association has a safety and health commitment program, and that's really designed to protect riders and employees. It focuses on shared commitments during COVID and actually pledges the connector or every other transit provider that signs on to this to 4 main areas. What we're pledging to is that we will follow official guidance. We'll continue to use the science. We're pledging to use smart practices for cleaning and disinfecting, providing timely, relevant information, and putting the health first by keeping our employees healthy. Now remember, we can't operate a system without employees, which is why in the early days and some of the challenges that I described to you earlier were so important as we scaled down and scaled back. Passengers, as part of this program, are asked to follow health and safety rules, wash their hands, wear face coverings, respect other riders' space, stay at home if sick. Now, this program through the American Public Transit Association is well branded, and it will be prominent on our website. We'll have a seal of commitment on our buses and in our transit facilities. So that's just another thing that we're going to do to help ensure the riding public and the community at large that we're doing all the things necessary to provide a safe public transit system. The last bullet, I'd ask our friends in marketing to put together a video highlighting our contract employees and the work they do as our frontline heroes. Because they've been providing essential service throughout the entire pandemic, ladies and gentlemen, and they are our heroes. But unfortunately, we couldn't make this thing work. And with the luck I had with my WebEx audio and having to use the phone, I'm not even going to try it. But I would encourage you to, it should be the email that Calvin sent you. If you would click the link in your presentations on your own private time, I think you'll really enjoy the video, and you'll see our frontline employees doing what they do every single day. And with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Dwayne, I'll see if I can jump in first. It's Kevin again. I will tell you that before the meeting started, I made a comment to the chairman that I was a little disappointed in the agenda. I didn't think it was going to focus enough on transit to the disadvantaged areas. But having listened to your presentation and the challenges that you had to overcome get service back to full levels. Very, very impressive. And so therefore, I have to ask if we could get you to take over the Fairfax County public school system.
Well, we might want to talk to Tom first.
Don't do it, Dwayne. Don't do it.
Let me go. But
All
I
right.
will tell you, Kevin, that we're looking forward to getting our kids back on the connector because, as I'm sure you're well aware, we developed a free student pilot program for the connector 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a tremendous success. And the ridership for our middle and high school students had grown to roughly 7 or 8% of total connector riders. Now, we do have some students riding the buses today. Obviously, there's some virtual learning and maybe some in school, and they can ride our buses after school. But maybe we'll try to get the students back on the connector first, and I'll think more about your offer.
All right. Well, thank you again very much. Very impressive work, and we salute you.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Other commissioners, any more other questions we'd like to ask here? Alexis, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Sure, just a comment, or I know that your strategic plan is underway or planning for it, and I wanted to see where you are in the process, and you know, obviously not expecting to hear any conclusions at this point, but would hope to hear from you all again soon once that process is underway. And yeah, just curious where you're at and what your hopes are for the outcome of it.
Well, I appreciate the question, Alexis, and I'm going to say we're 2/3 of the way done. Our plan is due to the board in early 2022, I believe. We'll actually have to supply that plan to the state as well. And Mike, if you're still on, do you just want to give a quick 30 seconds on the timeline of our strategic planning effort, please?
Yes, I can. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. As you may or may not be aware, we have just done our first round of public meetings. Dwayne had mentioned that we broke up the county into 5 pieces. All that information that we've been working on for the last couple of years are going to become part of the strategic plan. Anna and her group has been doing a great job trying to get the word out. I believe we've gotten over 2,600 comments, participants on our survey already. So the next steps that we'll be doing is identifying our improvements and modifications to our system. And hopefully in the near future, we'll be bringing those modifications and recommendations to the public for their input. And we'll once again do another full round of public communications that we can get out there and provide that information to the public and get their feedback. And then after that, we'll be doing an implementation plan and a financial plan. Hopefully that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Yes. Do we have other questions from commissioners here? I obviously very much appreciate everybody coming here. This was a lengthy panel, but an essential one for us to do. You know, we knew when we were talking about doing these things that it was important to put things in larger context and make sure we also drill down into those areas that were particularly relevant to transportation, starting with the bus service for obvious reasons. Very glad to hear that Kevin is perhaps as satisfied as you're likely ever to see him for this part of the conversation here. As he reserves the right, I'm sure, to ask more questions to get further into more detail, and that is appropriate. But being able to have one Fairfax here to sort of set a foundation for us, and to talk about what FCDOT is doing. We knew that FCDOT had already been doing some things. Tom had passed that on to us, as had Calvin and others here. So we knew this was an area that they'd be taking seriously. And it's very gratifying to see that as we, look in this area, FCDOT is not a place that's going to have any reluctance to try and incorporate these equity pieces because they're obviously clearly already doing it. And so we just need to, sort of keep this up, get into some specific policy recommendations as we go forward. Well, that's one of the reasons we get into oversight and things like that. But I will mention here, as I sort of alluded to previously, we have some sort of guiding principles that we're trying to make sure that we keep in mind as we look at things. We may talk about that in the offsite. We may just sort of lay it off to the side and have it there and sort of look to it as almost like a reference item. But one of the things that we've got in there is recognizing different complexion of issues in different magisterial districts, different demographics, and different economic capabilities of transportation users. So we are trying to embed, sort of the different experience that folks have. I use the word equity, although it's not just equity, but that's an important piece of it in all of the things we do. And so this is of immense value as we go forward. Tom, thank you so much for allowing folks to come and for injecting some of your points as well too. Very much would like to look at the brief that you talked about there that you've been working on. Certainly don't rule out it might be appropriate, but I'm sure probably would be appropriate at some point to have you come and talk about that with the TAC. If you'd feel comfortable through Calvin sharing with me right now, we can sort of calibrate a little bit there in terms of timing. Maybe it's something you might want to, if you're able to join us at the offsite here when it comes, something you might want to mention there, but I'll leave that to you to decide how you'd like to transmit that to us when the time comes. With that, I'll open up for any last comments, observations from our panelists, from our commissioners, and then allow folks who choose to, other than the commissioners, to leave us as we move forward to the last of our evening's activities.
So, Mike, this is Tom. Just one final thing I would say on behalf of the staff is if the commissioners do have other suggestions in terms of outreach, ways that we can reach a broader audience, as Anna mentioned, we are all ears. So if you do have suggestions or things that you think we can use to broaden our outreach to the community, please pass those on so that we can look to incorporate them in our outreach. That's really critical to us. And as Anna said, and I think Dwayne may have mentioned as well, we're never going to be 100%. But with the various input that you all may be able to share, hopefully we can get closer to that.
Appreciate that. And outreach is going to be a sort of a topic of itself during our offsite strategies we have for reaching out. Obviously, we're, our structure is magisterial based. And so there's a natural connection there. Obviously each of the commissioners have different demographics, but, with Pete and Alexis, having, I want to use Pete's phrase, sort of, a good portion of the yellow, so to speak, in their districts. Understand there's going to be some pieces there that we're going to key off those commissioners for outreach in that area. Not that it's limited just to those districts. We recognize there's more to the story there. So yes, Tom, we do want to very much help with that.
Have you made use of some of the local blogs? I'm thinking specifically of the Annandale blog. They're certainly kind of hungry for news stories, and I think anything that you would like to say would probably be put up there, and it does reach a good part of the Falls Church Annandale community. And I think it's pretty much free. So I read it when it comes out twice a week. And I don't know how many other people read it. I think we got a pretty good audience. But those kind of things, I don't know if you've considered using that or have used it, but I would commend it to you for doing it.
This is Anna. Thank you, Commissioner Hoskins. We actually have a really good relationship with the Annandale blog editor and usually get good coverage, but those are exactly the kind of things that we mean when we say local, hyper local, and getting into where the people are. So that's a great suggestion, and we are trying to take advantage of those. So more of those you have, the better. Just send them our way.
That's the only one I know of. I don't know if there's others in the other neighborhoods there might be.
But if I may, it's beyond just, you know, outreach. If we can find any of these groups that are interested in participating directly and coming to a meeting like this, they can definitely then, you know, have direct impact. So, you know, not only should we reach out, but we should also try to capture some of them and bring them into the fold, so to speak, so that they can, you know, have more impact.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we do that kind of outreach, we will, you know, remain closely connected with CDOT itself, because if it's a good idea for us, it could very well be a good idea for them. We want to make sure we complement each other's efforts as we go forward. And so, but yes, I agree, Pete. Thanks for the suggestion.
I just wanted to just thank you all for inviting me to be a part of your meeting tonight, and to actually also just acknowledge the dedicated work of the DOT team. Anna and Neil, her co-equity lead, have been very dedicated throughout this process. And so, you know, you all are well supported. And if there is anything that I or my team can do to support your efforts, Anna and Neil can definitely reach out and engage us. But wanted to just thank you for the opportunity to give you the broader context today and sort of put your focus, you know, on transportation within the broader context of One Fairfax. But before signing off, just wanted to acknowledge.
I have a comment or a question for Carla.
Thank you.
One of the, looking at the map that you put up with the first slide, I was looking at that and I was just trying to decide whether I live in a blue area or a yellow one. It's really kind of jigsaw around 7 corners. And one of the things that's going on there, whether you're aware of it, kind of controversial, is this rather ugly topic of gentrification. This area is ripe for it, and we see it going on. And whether it's yay or nay, there's houses that are being torn down and rebuilt, and very often that's taken away from what little affordable housing of any kind that there is here. And that certainly has an equity impact to it that's, I don't know whether it's healthy or not, but you know, anything you could do to enlighten us on that. I'm not sure there's a lot to do with it. If somebody wants to sell their property and build something new on it, can't really stop them. But on the other hand, I think one of the things that we might move
Somebody is sneezing, please mute.
Sorry.
Accessory dwelling units, or things like that, or changing the zoning to allow duplexes. I know they've done this in Portland and Minnesota. There was a bill before the legislature last year to do that on the table. And do you really want to tackle that issue?
I mean, when you know, our land use and zoning practices are a huge part of addressing the structural nature of the inequity in the county, and really what we are getting to when we talk about the environments in which people live. There is definitely, you know, a lot when I talk about engaging the community and key stakeholders, because there's so much that is outside of the control of local government, while we, in many cases, have a regulatory role in these situations. You know, people and development happens sort of within the rules that don't always align with our equity goals. So I think the issue of gentrification is something that is affecting certain neighborhoods in that Seven Corners area for sure. It sort of comes along with areas where you see concentrations of older housing. But I think it's one of the topics that's being tackled by our Department of Planning and Development equity team. And so while I can't suggest any specific initiatives at this point that are seeking to address it, I do think it's a principle, at least, to try and bring opportunities to the community that enable longtime residents to be able to to share in the changes that come along with new development, and that they ultimately won't be displaced. And so some of that, speaks to, how, different zoning rules that might allow for different types of housing to be built. But, we want to make sure that as Fairfax County evolves, that we create places for everybody. And I think that is something that is being carried on by principle. Now it's how do you translate that principle into actual action, again, on the part of the county, but also through our development partners as well. So you identify a pretty significant issue, and it's one that I think we're going to have to tackle if we're going to have any success related to our equity goals.
I didn't bring that up earlier because it's only tangentially related to transportation, but it's really pretty foundational.
It's foundational, absolutely.
Equity. And this is, you run into these homeowners associations and covenants, and which I have one now. I didn't have one before. I call it the housing Nazis, but that's okay.
Yes.
But you may have to break up some of those covenants. I mean, that's tough.
Well, good luck with that. Fortunately, that's not directly a transportation issue. Though.
I'm going to shut up now. That's not enough. But
yeah. Well, thank you, Rose. Appreciate it. Thanks for the answer, of course. What I like to do is let our guests depart. Tom's been at least 3, 4, 5 meetings. I'm not sure how many tonight. You're welcome, of course. Other folks are welcome to stay, but I think you would, if I were you, take advantage of the opportunity here to get out while the getting's good, and we'll carry on for just a little bit longer with the business of the TAC here. So, if there's any last points, I will again thank our guests for coming. We will be in touch. We will stay in touch. We'll keep working this together, and appreciate your coming and joining us this evening.
Thank you.
To Tom, if you're still there, you magically appeared on the screen for a little bit, so I'm wondering if you were dabbling in what I understand is going to be the next step up from Zoom and WebEx, which
has left the meeting.
Is holography. I don't know, Tom, if you're still on.
Has left the meeting.
We saw you there briefly.
I'm here, and it's a background that I'm using for tonight. What was available for me today?
Yeah, hey Kevin, this is Eric. The transmission data rate for a true hologram is phenomenal. Ain't gonna happen anytime soon unless it's synthesized.
We're looking at 6 or 7G probably at that point, at least.
Take care.
Well, hopefully we'll be back.
Thanks, to very much appreciate it. We'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Meeting in person, and Roger, be careful with your comments, because one of your commissioners might be the head of his condo association.
Has left the meeting.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. It is officially public comment period time. I don't see any names on the banner there, but I know that's not the limit of folks that can be participating. Are there any members of the public who are here who would like to make any comments? Okay. Moving on to the next topic, I'll be very brief about this. The Virginia Freedom of Information Act communication obligations. As you know, it's been an interest of mine just to make sure we understand what we can and cannot do. Have had exchange with folks with the county lawyers there. We still can talk. We as we know, any two commissioners can talk anytime, any place. What they don't want to do is have email communications, even about things like putting agendas together. We did that in the past. I think based upon the information I've gotten from the lawyer, Probably shouldn't do that. And also can't use Google Docs as well. I am going to be taking a training course March 24th to learn more about it. Maybe there's some maneuvering room in there. The goal is not to go to find a way around the FOIA rules. Or the point of me going is to understand them better. But we do need to be, continued cautious and vigilant in the area. So I know that Alexis had put a document on a Google document site. Quite honestly, I don't think we even ever really opened it up because we were talking with the lawyer there. So what I have to do is, in preparation for the offset, I will send the document again to everybody with a little bit of guidance about responding. Basically, you can respond back to me. You cannot include any other commissioners on the email when you send back to me, because that then makes 3 of us. However, if you see something that you wonder about, or you want to communicate with another commissioner about something, you feel free to do that, as long as it's 1 commissioner at a time. So that way, obviously, you can communicate with me if you want. But if there's something that you'd like to ask, Kevin about, or Alexis, or anything like that, you're able to reach out one-on-one, have a communication, and then get back to me one at a time. Awkward, yes, but those are the rules. We know them, and we'll just have to understand them a little bit.
Well, in addition to understanding those rules, maybe one of the things that come out of this is, in light of COVID and telework and all the stuff we're doing now, see possible changes in those rules. And if we could come up with some specific, reasonable proposals to take them to our legislators. I'm not about doing that. I've done it before. Attention to it. Let's do it.
Well, I'm certainly not adverse to asking permission and I wouldn't say pushing the boundary, but making sure we understand what the boundaries are. That's difficult, not insurmountable. First step is make sure we understand what the limitations are now. And quite honestly, I wouldn't want to ask for anything that the board themselves are not currently doing. So, there's mechanisms we can use to find out what's going on there, and understand how they're doing things day to day. But we just need to continued caution in the area.
I think you're right. We educate ourselves first, so that's fine. I'll be glad to take a look at the document.
Okay, thanks, Roger. Appreciate that.
Mike, if we have something of interest, we're still allowed to send it to Calvin, maybe copy you and say, please share this with the rest of the TAC.
Can certainly do that. That's the way we've done things in the past. So yes, we can do that, whether it's an article or a point or something like that.
Okay.
So I appreciate being copied, but yes, that's the way we would do it. Okay. Wanted to talk briefly about the offsite, so to speak there. I did have a communication with Tom right before the meeting this evening. Mary Pauline didn't get a chance to even send you an email about it, but Tom has set up a meeting on Monday, the 22nd at 11 o'clock for he and I, and Mary Pauline, if you're available too, please, you can join us to talk to the facilitator. Now, we have tentatively, I'm sort of making an announcement now, tentatively would like to have the offsite on the 27th. That was the day that commissioners, we got the most number of commissioners. Rachel Flynn is available that day. Mr. Alcorn is available that day. Tom is still checking his calendar. He's not sure. I need to, I've not yet heard from Dale Castello, but certainly not going to not do the offsite on the 27th if he were the only one who's not able to participate there. I'm not sure if the facility is going to be available on the 27th. We'll talk about that on Monday. My view is, and I'll huddle up with Mary Pauline about this, but while you'd like to have a facilitator, it's not necessarily going to be a showstopper if we can. We'd see what kinds of capabilities she can offer, or what kind of things we want to do and stuff like that. So as of now, we're tentatively planning to do our offsite starting 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, the 27th of February. What I'll also do is, and I sort of alluded to it previously, we'll send out the the agenda for the offsite there. And Alexis had made a modification in one area. We'll include that. This will give commissioners a chance to look at it and add comments there. Again, as I talk about the rules, just get back to me and copy Calvin, and we will send it out to everybody there. One point I will make from the agenda we talked about previously, we allowed like 15 minutes to talk about potential guiding principles. I think we'll probably just take that off and have like a side document or something like that. We can refer to it during the course of the conversation if we want to, but I would like to make sure we have plenty of time for the panel discussion and plenty of time for us to talk about. I don't think we necessarily need to go over potential guiding principles, although if somebody wants to bring it back, we can certainly do it, and we can talk about it during the course of the discussion there. That's what I have about the facilitated, the offsite there. Any comments, questions, or something like that, open up for them right now. Otherwise, we'll just go into some of the closing activities. Okay, hearing no objections. I will, the chair's report there, keep this brief as well. I did have a chance over the weekend to talk to Shamali Hoth. As I mentioned previously, she is the transportation aide to Mr. Alcorn. Had a very good conversation. She has a keen interest in bike and pedestrian safety. I mentioned that Commissioners Sitnick and Glenn are already designated as our liaisons to the Bike and Trails Commission there. So that's an area that she's talked about. I'd be very interested to see exactly where Mr. Alcorn comes down, so to speak, what he wants to talk to us about. She mentioned things about equity. She mentioned things about meeting with other groups. I mentioned that previously because it was germane to our conversation that we were having. But these things all are sort of fitting together there. So productive conversation, and I think that we'll also include her, obviously, in outreach, future outreach to the transportation aides of the other board of supervisors members as well. We've had meetings like that in the past. We'll certainly want to have another one in the future. As yet TBD. We'll talk a bit about that during the offsite when some of the timing might be good for outreach and things like that. The last thing I'll mention prior to going through roll call of the commissioners is have been made aware of the connected DMV. They've done some stuff with TDM, Transportation Demand Management, and other things. They want to start a hydrogen initiative in the area. I guess we're going to become hydrogen producers, not sure exactly what. My first thought is it's technical. I'm reaching out to Eric. And despite having a short fuse on that, he agreed to attend the meeting and sort of report back. He also will probably do some liaison for us for some transportation technology committee there. As you know, and Eric has admitted, he has an interest in the background technology. So we're kind of moving him in that area a little bit, helping him be a canary in a coal mine for us in that area. But those are some areas that I wanted to mention to the TAC that we're going to be working on. And Eric, thank you so much for your willingness to at least look over the fence and see what's going on and help keep us informed there.
Sure thing.
Okay. With that, those are my announcements. And so now we are just sort of the update of the commissioners away here from being able to get out of here. That said, if we have something important to discuss, happy to take a few minutes to discuss it. Again, if something really needs to be gone over more detail, we can always look again at the agenda. Last thing I mentioned about the agenda is we won't talk about the March agenda tonight, not only because it's late, but because I wanted to talk about that after we'd had the offsite. So that might have some influence on what we want to talk about next as the TAC. So with that, I'm going to go through the original the list in the order that I called your name when we established the connectivity. So Linda Sperling, Commissioner Sperling, any last comments you'd like to offer for the TAC? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Kevin, Commissioner Morse.
Two things quickly. Roger, for your information, I don't know if it's repeated, but last night, and I've taped it, I got halfway through a PBS. I think it's about 3 hours of If You Lived Here. So if you want to see the cost of gentrification, places like the H Street corridor and Silver Spring that I watched last night, look at some of the price tags on those resales. If you can find a repeat performance.
Is that on
Then
YouTube or something? Or where might I find it?
PBS, sometimes they repeat, sometimes they don't. It's called If You Lived Here, and it was a brand new thing that they started. And then my second item, Mr. Chairman, was just I saw on the future meetings my other favorite topic, Uber, Lyft.
Yes.
Getting those guys in.
It is, yes, it is still on the list. And that was part of the comment I made before. I think that's something we'll talk about coming out of the offsite.
Okay.
David, I hope you're going to be able to be there at the offsite so we can draw upon your expertise. Working closely with them as you do, but also we need to be mindful of the fact that closeness means to make sure we need to disclose things and stuff like that, so we can work through that. But yes, that is on the list for things we want to look at doing. It still is.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next is Hunter Mill. Commissioner Westenhoff, I hope you've been able to limp along here as best you can. Can you speak up now, I hope? Obviously, this is something we're going to have to get fixed. I don't know if she can hear me.
Wait.
Oh, there she is.
Okay.
Yes, fantastic.
That's kind of interesting. I was just saying, the only thing I have to say about Hunter Mill, what's going on is Shamley and I are working together because Walter wants a bike ride to celebrate the virtues of Hunter Mill, and just similar to what Commissioner Stork has done down in the Tour de Mount Vernon. So we're starting that up. The date is going to be May 15th. It's going to hopefully be multimodal. We're pretty excited about doing it. But it's really looking at all the different ways that you can move around in Hunter Mill, both recreationally and commuting. So there's that. And then the other thing is, if I can't get these tech things figured out, I'm not going to sit all day on my phone doing the offsite. I just want to give you that heads up right now. Calvin has reached out to me. We're going to try and get somebody from Fairfax County IT. We tried to work it through last couple weeks ago with Robin, and like I said, I bought a new laptop and I bought headphones, and I'm still not getting anything through. So I can't believe I'm the only person in Fairfax County who has this issue connecting with the county. So somebody over there has to know how to fix this.
I agree. And please do keep me posted as well, because we obviously want to do everything we can to make it possible for you to participate on the 27th. And we want to make sure we connect, particularly, although not just because, we like to reach out to other groups and folks who almost certainly have some of these same kind of issues. So yes, we need to fix this. Thank you.
I will work with our in-house tech support and try to help her with the input issue. But hopefully we can do that. Yeah.
And Calvin, sorry, Kelly, you going to say something?
I was just saying thank you to Calvin.
Okay. No, the reason I was jumping in is because, with the technical issues we had this evening, the phones and Dwayne and stuff like that, if you could, Calvin, sort of incorporate that in your, assessment of what's going on as we put up the hood. I don't know, I won't say the issues are related. They may very well be, but, we need to make sure that we understand how that we, don't have a reoccurrence of what happened. It's okay. We survived. As I say, we're all friends here. We do want to try and keep those sort of things from happening.
And Calvin, when you are checking in on some of the other technology, I know the Disability Service Board, we use Zoom. So it doesn't seem that all of the boards and commissions are using the same technology. And perhaps one of the other modes of technology seem to have better results than others. Maybe that's just one thing, Calvin, for you to check into.
Thank you. I think this is per agency decision, on what technology that we support. The county gave us a choice between WebEx and Zoom. And I believe that the explanation that was given to me and everyone else was that WebEx is free and Zoom is not. So
That's a good argument for using it.
but unfortunately, there's no technical support from WebEx, and we have to rely
That's
on
why
our
it's free.
in-house IT support. But I would definitely check again to see if, if the answer had been changed. Yeah.
And that makes sense, but if it is being paid for already within the county, one would think that they might share it for other commissions to use as well. Because it's obviously being paid for in the budget somewhere else.
I guess so, yeah. But I think that WebEx have been paid through a funding to the county by the federal or the state government. Yeah, I'm not sure, but that was the reason that was given to us. Yeah, I will definitely check again.
Appreciate it.
Okay, and the main reason I throw it out is that we do seem to obviously have some technology issues on this, and on the DSP, we don't seem to have these issues. So that's why I throw that out.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't think they had a choice. I thought the county was countywide. They had to use WebEx. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought that was the mandate.
So, hi all, this is Brent Riddle, and just to chime in on this, we can certainly check and see. There are some things that we're allowed to use Zoom for, and obviously we use Teams internally quite a bit. But I'm actually the staff person for the Route 28 tax district, and I was told that we have to use WebEx for a very similar kind of gathering that we're having here. And so we're being told what platforms to use, but we can ask and see. I don't know exactly the rationale. I mean, Calvin could be right that it could have something to do with site licenses and fees and whatever. I don't know, but we are getting direction on which ones we are allowed to use. So we'll double check it.
Well, appreciate that, and first choice for a number of reasons is to make WebEx work for everybody, including Commissioner Westenhoff and other folks. But if we're having troubles, then it's our obligation to voice those, and we will. And if we are not the only ones having those problems, then it becomes a broader issue. If we are, I scratch my head because I wonder why we'd be the only ones. But I have to believe the county wants to make sure that we've got connectivity that works. And so we will find a way to make the connectivity that works, and whatever it takes to do that, I'm confident we'll be able to find a way to get connectivity that works reliably. And
Totally agree. Totally understand. Yep.
Sure. Okay. All right. Commissioner Westenhoff, anything else? I think that was it. Just want to be sure. She might have muted herself now. Okay. I tell you what, Kelly, if there is something else, pipe back up. Commissioner Hoskin, Mason District. Anything, Roger?
I'll pass.
Okay, thank you. Mount Vernon, Pete Sidnick. Any last things?
Yep, just one interesting time. We had a combined VDOT and FCDOT meeting on pedestrian safety on Richmond Highway. And I gotta say, it was one of the best meetings I've attended. They really had their act together. We addressed everything you could think about pedestrian safety wise. Looking back though, we should have probably put it also under the lens of equity. But at the same time, even without putting it under that lens, we pretty well dealt with it. So it was a great forum. So compliments to VDOT and FCDOT. One thing that I've heard, we're not planning and zoning folks, but I understand what we're talking about when we talking about land use. There is a balance though between maintaining affordable housing and also revitalization, because at some point affordable housing becomes less than affordable, it becomes unfortunately deteriorated housing. So there has to be a good balance between everything. So just my 2 cents worth.
Okay. Thank you. If I could ask Pete, if you will, do you know Shamali Hoth? Have you met her by any chance? Works for Mr. Alcorn.
No, I have not.
The reason I ask is that if you could send me a 2-sentence email or something like that describing the pedestrian safety activity. Shamali is very interested in pedestrian safety. She might welcome the chance to talk to you about it and learn a little bit more. And so if it was in the real world, I would copy Kelly on the note. I'm probably not going to be able to do that now because that would make 3. Kelly, we'll connect Pete up with Shamali there on the pedestrian safety issue there, and maybe she'll want to talk to you about that. So quite honestly, if you got any slides or anything, that'd be fantastic. I can forward them on to her and connect the 2 of you up, but I would ask you if you could do that, please.
Well, we have plenty of slides, both provided by FCDOT and VDOT. No problem at all. And it was a combined transportation and public safety meeting. So it was really a good event.
Well, to tell you the truth, it's probably something we're sharing with the entire TAC. I know not everybody's going to pour over it, P-O-R-E, with with a fine-tooth comb. But yeah, send it to me, and we'll send it to Calvin. He can send it out to the TAC as well, so people can see what was covered.
Now, do you want just the 2 sentences, or do you want copies of everything that we have?
Well, a 2 sentence would be nice to sort of summarize things. I don't know how many briefings are we talking about here?
Well, it's basically 1 set of slides presentation from FCDOT and another set from VDOT.
Okay, that sounds manageable, I think. As long as they're not 55 megs each, that ought to be okay.
All right, we can do that.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mike, just a note.
Yes.
Her name is pronounced Shamli.
Shamli? Oh, so the A is silent?
No, it's Shamli.
Shamli. Okay.
Just leave out the Y. Shamli.
Y. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the correction. I appreciate that. Sure. Okay. 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 Next on the list, Lee District, Commissioner Glenn.
Good evening. I don't have anything else tonight.
Okay, thank you. Providence District, Commissioner Hancock.
Hi, I was just going to mention that the Greater Washington Partnership came out with their new study today regarding expectations for remote work. So I can send it to Calvin, but might be of interest to you all.
Yes, please do. Please do.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Springfield, Commissioner Thiel.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Sully District, David Skiles. Okay. And saving the best for last, Disability Services Board, Commissioner Jones.
I move to adjourn.
Oh, hearing a motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
Second.
It's not like everybody wants to do that, Roger. Okay, as of 10:17 p.m., the TAC is now adjourned. Thank you very much. We'll be back with you soon.
All right.
I vote in favor.
Say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned at 10:17 p.m. Thank you very much to everybody.
Hey, Mike.
Good night.
I'll hang on for a bit. Yeah. Yeah, Pete?
Send that directly to you.
Yeah, go ahead. And you can copy Calvin.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks again.
Good night.
Good night.
Mm-hmm.